I got a kick out of yesterday's video. This is my THG shirt. So I figured wear it for a TEG video, sure. And wear my Chargers hat because now football's what I'm going to be following for the next while. It'll be a while before other sports are back, I think. But, I just wanted to do a quick video over here in regards to what I've been watching with wrestling lately because I also want to test out the new set. I think I've got the video things that people were complaining about yesterday kind of ironed out. In order to set this up, this has been coming for a long time. The table that I'm using for the computer is the same one that I was using on the old channel, I want to say 3 years ago. Now, I don't have a prop for like an arm for the camera yet. So the camera is lower at an angle than it is on the Hockey Guy channel for now. That's going to change. I'm using a ring light today for the lighting. It's just a regular light. So again, I don't shoot in professional studios, so it I do my best I can with my home, and yeah, that's kind of the quaint aspect. Now I'm gonna get some pictures up in here, pretty quickly. I'm not gonna take down the Rammstein flag as it turns out because people seem to like it, but there's a lot of work to be done. So that being said, and the camera, the video, all of it, it's all the same sort of setup that I have in the other room. The difference is this is a much better computer. So that the computer, when I bought this computer that I'm using here, that was kind of my way of saying, okay, Shannon, this is your job, and you can't cheap out on a computer. So I wasn't going to spend $250 or $300 on a computer and cross my fingers and hope the RAM would be good and that the computer would work. And no, I'm not doing that this time. So, and not that I did that with the one in that room either. The one in that room is a really nice computer that I got on a deal because I got it through a marketplace seller on Best Buy. We actually got two of them. One of them was going to be for Yvonne for the kids for her homeschooling. It never worked. Well, it worked briefly, and then the screen was broken, and there wasn't any way for her to do anything about it because she got it through a marketplace seller. So, anyway, huge disappointment on that one. And so this time I went through Amazon and I went with the best rated, and it's a gaming computer as well. So if I ever actually decided to do gaming on my computer, it would be on this one, which makes sense because if I was going to do gaming live streams, they'd be on the Entertainment Guy channel, anyways. All right, so I want to talk a bit about with the whole wrestling thing, and it's interesting because WWE right now has great storylines going on with Sasha Banks and Bayley. They have a fantastic storyline going on with Roman Reigns and his family. We can complain that Roman Reigns should have been a heel years ago, but it's now happened, so that's great. Now, if this is being done to set up Roman Reigns versus The Rock at Mania, which is the rumor, kudos to them for pulling that off. If they actually pull that off, even if they don't, it's been this great story. Sort of like when Randy Orton was doing the Legend Killer thing. This is basically he's fighting off the Samoans, and at some point, wouldn't Samoa Joe get into this? I know they're not family, but there's the Samoan fight to be had there, and Samoa Joe's a pretty good wrestler, so as long as he's cleared to go, I think that'd be a good move. But the interesting thing is, we can all agree that some of the undercard stuff is terrible right now. It feels like Otis getting the briefcase was just for shock value, and they didn't really know what to do with it once he had it. And now he's lost it to the Miz, which is like, okay, that was 10 years ago. The Miz had it, and so the other problem I have with it is we've watched the Miz lose every single match and feud he's been involved with for years, and now he's got the Money in the Bank briefcase, which just ideally goes to a younger wrestler, a newer wrestler, to get them over. So if they were going to go with Otis, then run with it. Have Otis start winning big matches against guys like Sheamus. Have him fight Keith Lee to a time limit draw. Well, they don't do that, which is too bad. Time limit draws, I think, are one thing that can be really good when they're used sparingly and properly. The one thing that I like too, and I've always liked this idea, is referees stopping a match because a guy can't continue. And I know there's a split in the wrestling fandom on that as there is on everything. Anyways, but the idea of a wrestler not being able to continue, well, you get that in boxing and you get that in UFC. So why don't we see that more in wrestling? Why is it that a guy can get beat up with chairs and tables and everything, and they're just out and they look dead at ringside, and then the match continues because the referee doesn't stop it? Now, the interesting thing is that if we go back to old pay-per-views and you watch old wrestling stuff from the late 90s, early 2000s, Attitude Era stuff, there was a lot of crap. There's a lot of stuff that you watch and you go, oh, I hated this. But it's those big moments that really make all of the crap that you're navigating through worth it. SmackDown seems to have all the writers in line and coming up with really good storylines. Bayley and Sasha, absolutely, they knock it out of the park. And the whole Roman Reigns thing. Raw is kind of all over the place, and you just don't know what you're getting. It's like Retribution. They don't know what they're going to do with them. And it's a shame because Mustafa Ali, I think, is really, really talented, but I don't think they know what they're doing with him either. So that's still a work in progress. But I still prefer what AEW is doing. I still think AEW is doing a better job. You look at tonight; they're in the semifinals of figuring out who's going to be the next number one contender. And obviously, right from the beginning, they were building towards Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page. Okay, that doesn't bother me in the slightest. There's been some really good wrestling action along the way, and it's a good story. It's a good story, and they seem to be committed to these long, drawn out storylines. Whereas, I don't know, like you have the Raw Underground, and then it's gone, and you have all these ideas that kind of get half baked, and then they're gone, and there's no real explanation for it. And so again, I think WWE is doing better. If I look at where the product is now compared to, say, 6 months ago, I think they're doing better. I think that having competition in AEW has forced them to be a little bit better than what they were. But there's still work to be done, and there's always going to be crap. With wrestling, there's always going to be stuff you look at and you go, For instance, you had MJF and Chris Jericho in a song and dance last week that people got really upset about, or they loved. I thought it was great. I thought it was funny. It was a wrestling segment I could watch with my wife, and she looked confused the whole time, which is kind of the point. And clearly, they're building towards a double cross here, where the inner circle is going to turn on Jericho, and MJF's going to lead the inner circle, and it's going to make them a group that has nuclear heat, as well as give Jericho this massive face push. Jericho can do both. He can be a heel. He can be great at it. He can be great as a face. I think it's fantastic. I have seen a lot of complaining online about, oh, they push all the WWE guys. Somewhat, but they've still made some stars out of guys. And so there'll be a video I do at some point regarding wrestling when I talk about AEW, about guys like Paige, Omega, Orange Cassidy, who have become stars in and of their own right. The Young Bucks, guys who weren't in WWE, guys who, or the other argument I'd use is a lot of the guys like, the guys in the Dark Order who used to be in the WWE pecking order, none of them were huge stars. Luke Harper character was never really over. It's weird because he had a title, but what Brody Lee is now in AEW is so completely different from what Luke Harper was in WWE. It's not the same character at all, and it makes you wonder, gee, if they'd given him a microphone in WWE, how much bigger a star could he have been? And so this is, I think it's different than just when you compare it to like WCW back in the early mid 90s and how they were bringing in WWE guys and throwing them in the main roles, but they were basically still the same character, or they were a little bit amped up version of the same character, but they were basically still the same. Scott Hall was still Razor Ramon, even if he didn't use the Razor Ramon name. Kevin Nash was still Diesel, and Hulk Hogan was still Hulk Hogan. I don't think that Brody Lee is Luke Harper. I don't see that it's the same thing. Dean Ambrose over to Jon Moxley. Moxley is what Ambrose should have been. So that's a debate we'll have going, I think, for a long time. But in general, wrestling, when I have the time to sit down and watch it, one of the complaints I do have is that it's too long. The WWE shows, I think, are a little bit too long. Raw's third hour, I think you could ditch that. one minor tweak, and especially with the pandemic and not having house shows, I just think there's too many wrestlers in WWE. I think there's too many guys that are employed. So again, we'll see. We'll see if anything changes as we get into 2021, if we're able to start doing tours again, and how that's going to affect the wrestling companies. But in general, I think what we've learned out of the pandemic is Impact is really good. If you haven't watched Impact, it's actually really good. And it doesn't take itself seriously at all. There are some silly storylines that they basically flat out say with a wink to the camera, this is silly and ridiculous, and we know it. I really enjoy what's going on. I think that while some of it is just so goofy, I think at least it's trying something different. So if you're looking for something different in your wrestling programming, Impact is that to me. But anyways, yeah. The other thing that Yvonne and I have been watching is that we're up to the last episode of The Good Place. The Good Place is one of those few shows on TV that came in with a concept that they didn't compromise to try to get extra seasons out of. You could have had extra seasons. You could have. They would have sucked, but you could have done it. You could have done seasons where they're basically like, this is the Love Boat version of the afterlife, and oh look who the guest star is tonight. Oh look who's dead, and we're gonna do this great thing, and oh look this season we're gonna have this arc and that arc, and they never did it. They just, it was 4 years. They got her done. They got out while they could, and they did it perfectly. So even though I haven't watched the finale yet, I can see what the finale is setting up. So it's great. It perfectly encapsulates how a show can absolutely work if you have a vision before it goes on the air and you follow it through until the end and you don't compromise it to get extra seasons. Hello, Lost. Lost clearly was not meant to go on as long as it did, and when shows go on for that long, Supernatural stands out to me that way too. Supernatural's still a good show. I can still sit and watch episodes. It is nowhere near as intense as the fifth season of Supernatural. The fifth season of Supernatural was damn near perfect television. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below regarding Roman Reigns, this whole storyline, which is great. Paul Heyman's acting, which is fantastic. Everything that WWE is doing with this storyline is great. So, because we always accept a certain amount of filler with WWE shows, does this mean we can never have a truly perfect WWE program? Not that we have a perfect one with AEW either. There are certainly times where I roll my eyes at some of the matches and some of the randomness that happens with their booking. But are we doomed to never having that perfect show in WWE, or does that come at some point? How do you get there? I think the answer would be fewer wrestlers, fewer matches, and more storytelling to make those matches feel really, really important. If you watched Roman Reigns against Jey Uso and the finish that involved Jimmy as well, and you didn't feel the emotion in that moment, you're not a wrestling fan. But anyways, let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And yes, it's a work in progress on this channel. That's kind of the way it's always been. And when you're getting to a new setup and a new set, and you're still working on clearing areas out like this, you know, it's going to take a little bit of time. But thank you guys so much for your patience and your support. I will talk to you again soon.